What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined today by Scott Geirman. Scott, the Dodgers had a 3-game winning streak. It comes to a screeching halt in a brutal loss to the Pirates yesterday. Today, I want to kind of get at what is it about this Dodgers team that has made them frustrating, that has made them so disappointing. And so I'll ask you the question this way, Scott, because I've got an idea and I'm curious if you agree. True or false that offensive inconsistency has been the fatal flaw so far this season?
I would tend to agree. I think that the lack of consistent runs has put the pitching staff in a very strained situation a lot of the
Yeah.
time, and those issues have kind of been overblown because when they're not scoring, the pitching staff, can have a little bit of a hiccup and give up two or three, and then that feels like a mountain. So when
Yeah.
there's not consistent scoring and they haven't been able to tack on, that's been I think the biggest issue.
Yeah, and I think you bring up pitching. I think most people would look at the pitching stats and they would say, hey, that's the issue. The Dodgers are 20th, I believe, in runs allowed so far this season, and that's having played less games than some of the teams ahead of them. And yet, I still land on offensive inconsistency as the issue. And I'll give you some numbers. The Dodgers, interestingly enough, are third in Major League Baseball. They're tied for third in Major League Baseball in runs scored. Again, having played less games than a handful of teams. So they're third in runs scored. But the disparity between wins and losses is absolutely astonishing. Here's some numbers for you. In wins, the Dodgers are averaging 7.4 runs. That's 96 runs in 13 wins. But in their losses, they have scored just 33 runs, good for 2.8 runs in losses. Now you're saying, well, duh, like you're going to score more in games that you end up winning and less in games that you lose. But note the gap of almost 5 runs between those two. Here is another stat. The Dodgers have scored less than 2 runs 8 times in 25 games. Almost 1 out of every 3 games, they're scoring 2 or fewer runs. But I think this is the most significant stat to me, Scott. 4 runs. You and I think, would both agree with the lineup they have. 4 runs is not an unreasonable number of runs that you would expect this team to get to. I think it's on the low end of what you could expect this team to get to. When the Dodgers have scored 4 or more runs, Scott, they are 12-3. 12-3, but that shows you how many times they can't even get to 4. If the Dodgers could just smooth this out and give consistent offense where it's not 10 runs in a win and 0 runs in a loss, I think the record would be dramatically different.
Yeah, I tend to agree. It's kind of been that boomer bust all season. So it's frustrating to watch as a fan, given where they've been at in recent years. They lost an MVP player in Trey Turner, and they
Yeah.
didn't really replace him with anything.
Whoa,
So,
James Outman,
they're-
bro. James Outman, MVP James
you know,
Outman's replaced him.
but
I'm just
it
messing.
pushes it down the list, and it's without been in injuries and Will Smith not being there. Kind of the lineup shuffle has been difficult. Players been away with their families, and it's I've said it on Twitter a few times. It's going to be this is the blueprint that we're going to see for quite a bit. It's going to be
Yeah.
a lot of offense in some games and absolutely nothing in another. Yesterday we saw that against the Pirates against Contreras. So it's honestly a frustrating brand of baseball when
Yeah.
you come out there and they provide good approaches at the plate, and then the next game you'll go five innings no hits, and you're on
Yeah.
what the heck's going on?
I'm glad you said approach because, and I don't think this is something that most people tend to agree with, but it's something I actually believe that I think this is a fluke. What has happened to the Dodgers so far this season? I think the fact that they're tied for third in runs is fairly reasonable to expect. I think this offense has the capacity to be one of the best 5 offenses in all of Major League Baseball. I think what has been a fluke is the fact that those runs have been clumped in one game and then two crappy ones right afterwards. Because of the Dodgers' approach, because of their willingness to take pitches, to grind out at bats, to have good eye around the zone, that kind of thing. I tend to think that the Dodgers offense is going to normalize, not in that they're going to start scoring less runs, but those runs are going to stop coming in massive, massive bunches. Obviously, their reliance on the home run, I think, is a big reason why it has been this way so far. There's probably something to the fact that once you get up like 8 runs, like the Dodgers have been a handful of times, you're probably going to see crappy pitchers, and then you tack on, and then it inflates your stats. But like, I believe, Scott, that the Dodgers offense is going to normalize, and that 5-run gap between runs and wins versus runs and losses is going to come down. And maybe it comes down to like 6 runs they're averaging in wins and 3.5 runs they're averaging in losses. And I think once you see that happen, I also believe the bullpen's going to get better, but that's a conversation for another video. But once that gap shrinks and they're scoring a little bit more consistently day to day because of their approach, because Will Smith is back, because all these pieces, I think this is something I'm not overly concerned about. I think the inconsistency is a fluke and that it'll normalize as the season goes on. As we close out, I'm curious, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. Really. We touched on it a little bit earlier that not having Max Muncy there, not having Will Smith there, JD Martinez is out right now. The lineup consistency is a major issue. I
Yeah.
think that, once they hammer out that starting lineup, and they're able to settle in and realize, I think they know this by now. James Outman is him. He's a
Yeah.
guy and he needs to play versus both sides, platoon or not. He does not need to be just playing against right-handed pitching. So once they hammer that out, and Miguel Vargas figures out whatever he's going through, thumb issue or not, Will Smith had an insane start to the season. And I think once you put that right back into the heart of the lineup, slot him in at number 3, set him, forget him, I think they'll find consistency and we'll see, a little bit more of, they'll be hitting home runs, but their issues striking out a ton won't be there as much because that bottom half, 6 through 9, won't be as inconsistent. So I do think that there's a better brand of Dodger baseball on the horizon. People just got to be patient. It's early part of the year. If you look around on the standings, a lot of teams are kind of spinning the wheels right now, and it's fortunate for the Dodgers that it's coming at this time, and it's not just with the Dodgers. So sit tight, everybody. It's going to be frustrating. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, plug Will Smith back into the lineup consistently. Plug Mookie Betts in at shortstop to take away the black hole that has been Rojas and Chris Taylor offensively. Give Michael Busch a chance, maybe out in left field a little bit. Get Max Muncy back in the lineup. And all of a sudden, there are way less holes. As you said, Miguel Vargas, there's only one direction to go for Miguel Vargas. Freddie Freeman's been slumping a little bit. So once some of these things normalize and the Dodgers land on, okay, Mookie's at short, Outman's in center field. Now, all of a sudden, all we've got to figure out is left field and right field. And you throw some combination of Hayward, Bush, Thompson, Peralta out there. And those are your worst offensive players that we're talking about. All of a sudden, that's a lot different than a lineup that has Peralta, Rojas, Taylor, Barnes, and a struggling Miguel Vargas in there. So we agree. The inconsistency has been the fatal flaw thus far. But good news, Dodgers fans. The two of us, at least, don't think that's something that's going to continue throughout the rest of the season. That's Scott Geirman. My name is Jeff Spiegel. As always, thanks for joining us. Check out DodgerBlue.com, DodgerBlue1958 on social media. And of course, subscribe, ring the notification bell here on YouTube as well. You can follow Scott at Scott Geirman on Twitter. We appreciate you. Enjoy the rest of your day. And as always, go Dodgers.